The Best of T2C Compilations. Episode 21, From Service to Strategy. Segment 4, Leveraging SBIR Phase 3 and OTA Opportunities.
And practice on that. And so I have an episode where I did talk about how the larger businesses or even the more experienced primes, the more experienced smalls and mid-tier businesses out there, they have a higher risk threshold, and they have a higher bidding, like threshold because they have become used to either accepting that there's going to be loss bids out there. They're going to be bids that you don't win. They're going to be bids where you may not be as competitive, but you don't know until you put yourself into that environment and that situation as to what works, what approach work. Is the solution a sound solution? So you're kind of testing out, different approaches to, to being competitive. But you can't just go from, set aside sole sources to being competitive like overnight, unless you've got fantastic strategy or approach or, some type of innovative technology or solution out there that no one else, has, without, practicing it. So just like anything else, you got to practice it to be more competitive.
100%. And if you're not failing at all, if every time you submit you succeed, then you're leaving a lot on the table, in my opinion. Like and I don't like to fail at all, and I can be super type A, and I'm way too competitive. Ask my children. But like, I still think that we should be failing. Like, my company should be failing when we submit 20 to 30% of the time, because that makes me feel comfortable that we're in the right, we're not going after too much. Because if you're failing 70% of the time, then maybe you're submitting to everything that moves, and you're probably setting yourself up to have some performance and delivery issues if you're doing that. So I don't want to submit to too much. I don't want to sign up for more than we can accomplish. But at the same time, I want to submit to enough that we're learning from failure. And we can't do that if we're not failing at all.
No, exactly. And God, you and I are from the same mold. I swear to God, it's like, and this is the first time that we've ever had a chance to kind of talk, together. So it's not like we've been swapping stories and, singing Kumbaya all these years, but that's exactly how I feel. And, um, I work with companies a lot on bid decisions and, how do you make that bid, no bid decision and what should you bid on and stuff. And there are certain opportunities and certain times where you are going to want to stretch yourself, that you are going to want to bid at, say, yes, we're going to bid on this. It's a long shot, but, maybe it's a long shot that we like try to take. And so, you know, uh, preaching to the choir here, I totally agree with you, is that there's so much to be learned, from losses. And so, like, when you do have a loss, you do need to kind of take that time, do an after action, like do a hot wash and figure out like what did we do, course correct, and then test and do a different trial balloon on like on the next one. So it's like that whole building block of, like crawl, walk, run, like type of approach to being competitive in that space. Or in a
Exactly.
new technology or, whatever it might be that is kind of stretching you to like grow. And again, small businesses that want to kind of stay in that space and want to kind of manage the status quo. Again, there is nothing wrong with that. But for companies to really kind of be on that cusp or really want to grow exponentially, you have to kind of push the envelope.
And it's super scary to do, and especially if you're a small company who doesn't have someone who's got like contracting background or experience. Like, the idea of 100 pages of solicitation requirements, and then your response is like 70 pages in different volumes. It's a lot. Like, it's the sort of thing that would make me drop a class in college. So like, I get it, but at the same time I agree, like, you have to swing at that stuff. And then some, not always. Sometimes you don't get really any meaningful or helpful feedback at all from the government. But sometimes you also get really great feedback from the government in those situations, and I think that's also very valuable.
Episode 22, C-Suite Series, Chief Technology Evangelist. Segment 3, Strategic Technology Adoption, Overcoming Challenges in GovCon.
Um, let's move on to like our next segment here, because I think this is a really great transition into like strategic technical adoption, overcoming some challenges in GovCon. is that what are some common like challenges that GovCons face when adopting new technologies, and how can they kind of overcome some of these obstacles? Because there's obstacles everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on what level we're looking at this from. I mean, for me, I think that the biggest challenge are from a GovCon perspective, if you're trying to put together, we're talking about putting like teams together. I think the biggest thing that I've seen from a challenge perspective is making sure everybody's on the same page. If we're looking at IT solution sets and we've got to put together a team of different companies and organizations to do stuff, the biggest issue is generally the strict compliance and the regulatory requirements. If you're not familiar with the GovCon area, it's not easy to sell to the DoD, and it's real hard to sell to the Intel community. So products have to be baselined at a certain level, and everybody has to understand the importance of that. And I can't tell you how many times I've worked with global multi-billion-dollar companies that have a killer product. And we're like, hey, we could do a lot with this, but we need to get it FedRAMP. There's going to be an ATO requirement that we need to work through or whatever. And they'll absolutely just snub their nose, like, just sell it the way it is. It works. It is what it is. This is what we're doing. This is our baby. We don't want to do anything else with it. If the government doesn't want it, then we just won't sell it to them. And I think that's sad, because if it's something that can really help with national security to keep American data safe, then we should be working closely with the DoD to figure out a way to yes. Because we want the government to have the best in class solutions to keep our warfighters, keep the best technology in their hands as possible as they're out there fighting and winning wars and coming home for us, right? And I think that's a big shortfall, but not everybody's on the same page with that. They don't even understand sometimes, FISMA and FedRAMP is crazy. There are a lot of really great third-party companies that have made a business on accelerating FedRAMP for great tech. But you got to find them, you got to work with them. It's not going to just come to you. So I think that's one major issue. The second one would be just how horrifically bureaucratic everything can be when you're putting these teams together. I mean, the procurement process for government contracts is so slow and so bureaucratic, and it hinders the rapid adoption of new technologies. Now, it does that for a reason, because for the last 50, 70, 80 years, we were contracting tanks and ships and large, weapon systems.
It's a different type of contracting now. Exactly.
Right. Right. And our weapon systems software has become a weapon system, right? And there are certain things that we need to do, leveraging agile practices, not just in how we're developing that technology, but also in how we're doing the acquisition. So there's pockets of coolness, like we all know about the OTA process and cool things. Cybercom had a great system that they had employed. And I think some of those folks actually came out of Cybercom to help stand up trade winds for AI in the DoD. And that's really interesting too. But we just have to make sure we're monitoring all the checks and balances, not us, we're just trying to get the right solutions in the right folks' hands at this point.
Yeah.
But on the government side, they need to make sure that they're still doing the due diligence, because I can see a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong, and to have, instead of having the same usual suspects as these big defense industrial base FSIs always getting the same contracts, you're going to have the same thing happening with niche AI type companies that have figured out how to get into trade winds and are leveraging the platform in a way where everything is basically already competed, but it's the same thing getting selected over and over and over again.
Yeah. So I think there's something to be said about the pace and the speed in which the government contracts. And so I think that there's got to be a happy balance somewhere. Yes, government contracting can be much slower. By the time you actually let out a procurement, award the contract, the technology becomes antiquated. And so there is that issue, and that obstacle to kind of overcome is, now it's no longer relevant. Now it's no longer cutting edge. Now it's no longer solving the problem that the government originally had when it first sourced, the requirement. So there is some of that. And like you said, OTA, SBIRs, there's new creative ways of kind of getting to technology, getting to innovation much quicker than previously. On the flip side to that too is that because technology is moving at such a rapid click nowadays, and even within the last year, right? Like look at
Yeah.
OpenAI, look at, where we are, like, AI, MLL, that's not new. That's
No.
been around for over 50 years. And so it's not something that is kind of, like
You know what, though?
overnight.
I would say, like, it's not new, but it is. It's kind of like, it's one of those things, like, it's been around for a long time, but it's never been accessible to the general public like it is in the last year. That's why I think it's so
The
exciting.
democratization of it and the readily availability of it to like openness for everyone
Yeah.
else to use it. Yes. And so with that though, my argument too is I'm an early adopter. I will adopt and try anything that's out there. I will break it, test it. I'm curious about it. Security be damned. Sometimes, I'm kind of like, yeah, just like, let me in. Right. But with the government, they are risk averse, right? There are security measures in place. So there are things that they do have to kind of like do their due diligence. And I don't think that we want in the GovCon field to just kind of constantly readopting and integrate and implementing new technology without any type of discipline and controls over like meeting certain thresholds and certain metrics to make sure that, we are secure, that we are not, this introducing something into the environment, because there's a whole lot more at stake than the average user at home who's got Windows on their computer and only does it for Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, right? So it's a
Right.
whole different set of, security requirements.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I do. And I'm a big fan of OTAs because I do think that it expedites a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
they're improving. I actually spent the last two and a half years in the Pentagon as the chief of budget and legislative affairs for the Joint Staff J6, which is the highest communications IT office in the Department of Defense. And I really honestly think like what they're doing now, they are definitely trying to improve. They are trying to kind of break down some of the bureaucracy, just improve some of the timelines by removing old kind of processes that just don't matter anymore. They don't work for how quickly things are progressing in today's technology timeline, which isn't even 18 months anymore. It's like literally, I feel like it's every 3 to 6 months, like things are changing and upgrading in a very significant way. So I love that. I also think like some things will never change. You're always going to want to engage with your procurement officers often and as early as possible, right? It always comes back to relationships and just the one-on-one human contact of like having that conversation, explaining the problem, showing how you can be part of the solution. That's ultimately too something we have to make sure we don't lose touch with as we leverage more AI, as we do more things digitally, as we do things more things virtually, make time for the human in the loop.
So
We don't
important.
forget one.
Yes, it's all about the end customer. It's all about the end user. And it's literally all about them. It's not about you, industry. It's about the customers.
Episode 23, From Active Pursuit to Collaborative Growth, Transforming GovCon. Segment 4, The Power of Community in GovCon Success.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, always leverage the online platforms. Like I said, I'm horrible at LinkedIn, but it's the one place that I feel comfortable because I know I'm surrounded by basically my industry. And if I need an answer, the answer is out there. It's just pinpointing the right person. So that's also like not as good as face to face, right? And first off, we need to hang out more because I'm socially awkward. I'm kind of an introvert, actually, and I'm not great at starting conversations. I need more people like you in my life.
You need a wing woman. That's the whole thing, right?
Yes, I
You
do.
cannot do these events without a wing woman. Like I am the best wing woman there is out there. Because I
Oh,
don't mind
okay.
if you leave me. I don't like I may actually leave you at one point. So you're like, you're on your own.
Man, you're hired because okay, let's go to attend industry events. Like I've been to so many of them, and the ones I'm active, like I'm just an active participant at, have gone really, really well. Um, and it's me being active, which is a weird thing for me to do. I'm a bit of a wallflower, but when I'm not active, I certainly don't get a lot out of it. So I think that's probably an important point
Yeah.
as far as going to industry events. But there's also professional associations that some people might not know about. And it really depends on what your aim is, right? So we got the National Contract Management Association or the Association of Proposal Management Professionals. So those are like kind of honing your skills. And then we also have things like ACT IACT, where that's almost like a mentorship also program, or can act as a mentorship program. And you're sort of inserting the federal government as well into that. So you're getting more like a holistic view of things. So I love professional associations, or I love hanging out with people who are in them as well. But create your own content. I actually enjoy creating my own content. I know it's not everyone's, cup of tea, but even co-authoring articles or blogs is a really great way of kind of getting that ball rolling, because everyone out there's got their own experiences and they do have really important things to say. Going back to like mentorship, some of my most deep meaningful relationships have come out of mentorships, whether that's me mentoring someone else or me finding a mentor, someone who's truly like invested in helping me. So finding those, and they're not always easy to find the right fit, but when you do, boy,
Yeah.
it can
It can be
change the
very
course
helpful.
of what you're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then of course, like, start your own group. You have done it, I've done it. It's actually kind of fun to start your own
It
group
is.
if you find sort of a gap, right? Like you find a gap out there, something no one's talking about, but needs to be brought up. Man, like bring it up, be innovative, and get that conversation started, because there's other people out there probably just as excited to talk about it. And then, of course, contributing to existing communities, like your Entellectuals, they contribute to yours. And you mentioned G2X earlier. Talk about a group of people who can get a conversation started
Yeah.
virtually and have everyone jump in like really fast. They have a knack for that. So, contributing to what's already out there, because people do care what you have to say. Don't be too shy about it. So
Yeah.
that's my quick list for you.
Yeah, it takes a while to recognize too that you have something to say and that people will listen to you, because a lot of times you're like, oh, no one's going to listen to me, or there's smarter people out there, whatever. It's like, yeah, there are, but there's only you, right? So it's like, and you've got a perspective, you've got a set of, qualifications and experiences that are different from everybody, and you never know what little nuggets someone is going to take from what you say. So it doesn't have to be this huge, like transformative type of change that you have to go, that you're going to create out there. It's just, especially with the mentoring, I do a lot of mentoring, I do a lot of executive coaching, and I find that I learn so much more when I mentor someone, then if I were to go out and seek being mentored, like I get it, but I maybe I haven't found the right mentor, but I find that I value the mentorship that I get from my peers and my colleagues. And
Mm-hmm.
so we kind of do this reverse type of thing. You might talk me off the ledge and mentor me one day, I might be your coach the next day and coaching you off the ledge. And so finding your people, I think is really kind of important. And so surrounding yourself with, with those, really kind of help you be more successful.
Episode 24, Pitfalls in GovCon. Segment 3, Importance of CPARS and Debriefs.
God, I love this topic so much. Um, CPARS, which are the Contractor Performance Assessment Reporting System, uh, that's like a freaking mouthful. I don't think I've ever said it like out loud in words. So, um, it's vital, for a company's reputation. And so for those who are not, um, already doing government contracting, it's basically your past performance rating. It's like someone just gave you, like a Google rating or a review or whatever on your performance. And so it's, what a lot of contractors don't realize is that you can respond to CPAR evaluations,
Yeah.
like regardless of what is said.
Mhm.
And additionally, you can also ask for a debrief on, like when you win a contract instead of just when you lose a contract. So there's a lot of different ways that you can not only elicit responses and feedback from the government on your performance or your proposal, but there's also ways for you to, respond to some of these, like inputs and feedback from the government. So it's not just a one way street. It is a two-way type of, dialogue, similar to kind of what we talked about, earlier about having discussions with the government on like open acquisition and procurement opportunities. So, taking these two examples, why are these two aspects so critical for government contractors to understand to avoid pitfalls?
So I'll start with the debrief. In most instances, you are able to get a debrief if you request one within 3 days of a response
Mhm.
back from the government. You have to do it in writing, but and there's no guarantee that it's going to be a meeting. They may just send you a Word document giving you information. They may just do something over the telephone. And if you win, there's no guarantee that they will give you a debrief. But in most instances, they will. And I always tell people to ask for a debrief, even if you win. Nobody's proposal is perfect, no matter what we think. This
Mhm.
is an opportunity for you to gain knowledge on what the government is looking for. If there was an area where you didn't score so well, this is an opportunity for you to review this. So when you are submitting proposals in the future, this is something that you can tackle, and this is something that you can overcome. So you should always ask for a debrief, certainly if you lose, but you should ask for one if you win as well. You always want to be doing your best to put or submit the absolute best proposal that you can. And this happens with large businesses also. I mean, I've seen $1 billion proposals with mistakes in them. So it happens to everybody.
Yep, absolutely. And the beauty about asking for a debrief when you win is to really to get validation for what really works so that you can go back and do that again
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so, there's some companies that come in and they think, oh my God, like it must have been my management plan, or it must have been, like our staffing solution or our quality plan. And when you get a debrief from a customer, it may not have been that at all. It
Yeah.
may have been a total different reason, why they thought that your proposal scored higher or had the higher confidence or the lowest risk. But never assume that everything that you submitted was beautiful and perfect and great. It may only have been one element of that proposal. And so it's like, now that go and do more of that,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just thinking the whole thing was perfect.
Yeah, and this happens a lot with incumbents. They assume that it's theirs to win, and they're going to win. And I've seen lots of incumbents lose. So you need to ask for a debrief, no matter what.
Yep. And then CPARS.
Hmm.
So CPARs are kind of interesting because I only have a relationship with CPARs from it's got to be part of the proposal. It's kind of already been given to you. It's like it's a historical type of thing where you've gotten this feedback. Explain a little bit about the CPARS process and, what GovCons can take away from CPARs and like how to respond to your CPARs.
So at the end of the each year of a contract, the end of that period of performance, the government goes in and rates you, or they're supposed to. Some agencies, I've heard from people that they did not get CPARs. You should ask for them to go in and rate you if you have not heard anything at the end of your period of performance. The reason they do this is so when you go to submit proposals for other work, this is considered part of your past performance. Anybody who is reviewing your proposal for contract award, past performance is a part of every single contract award. It may not weigh as much in the evaluation factors, but it is absolutely a part of the evaluation criteria for every single contract award. what a lot of small businesses don't know is that you should always respond to your CPARS. If there's something negative, you absolutely need to respond and tell your side of the story. Because again, when they go in to look at your past performance, if you're going after another contract award, they're going to see whatever is populated there from the contracting officer and the contracting officer's representative, the core. If you had an excellent CPARS, this is your opportunity to just reinforce why your company is great, why you did such a great job on this particular contract. So there should always be something there, whether it's negative or positive. You should always respond in your CPARS, because whatever you write, reinforcing the great job that you did, they're going to see that as well.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about when your CPARs are positive
Mm-hmm.
to go in and try to like reinforce that, augment it, add to it, and just kind of, like add more icing
Yeah,
to
talk
that
about
because
yourself and
it
your
becomes
company. Yeah,
historical.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because more and more uh solicitations are allowing for CPARs instead of PPQs or past performance questionnaires.
Yep.
The scorecard, solicitations are allowing for CPARs, and so they're so much more common now. And then the other thing too, which is great for CPARs, is you can use quotes from your government customer from your CPARs
Yes.
in the feedback into
Yeah,
your proposals, and
absolutely.
so we leverage those a lot in the responses. So it's really a multifunctional, you know, um, report anymore.
Yeah, and I think like what you said, a lot of companies that receive good, satisfactory, excellent CPARs, they don't go in and they don't do anything because they don't feel like that they need to. But this is a
Yeah.
perfect opportunity for you to promote your business again.
Episode 25, Creative Contracting. Segment 3, Overcoming Common Challenges.
What are some common challenges that businesses face when trying to kind of implement some of these creative strategies? And how do you think that they can kind of overcome that, both from like industry and the government side?
Great question. So I think it's the pause and wait. Let someone else bring the idea because I don't want to overstep. And obviously there are situations where you should not overstep based on law, based on regulation. But one of the things that I think we don't utilize enough is assisting the government in what are the contracting pathways that are out there that they can leverage. Again, right, you go into what you're used to doing. And so when you have a new idea or a new way of approaching something, you need someone to be able to help in that process. And so creating what I call a non-branded contracting pathway document allows for the government, one, to know how you prefer to work, but also it shows you've done the research for what kind of contract vehicles they have, what offices they use, if they use like a different contracting office completely aside from them. Maybe it's a PEO office that has never had their own contract shop, but they really want this on contract. Who's going to be able to help them? On the industry, you can do this on the industry side. You can research it. And it's a lot easier for us because we do not have the restrictions of the VPN networks that the government has sometimes, or the restrictions on their computers where they're not able to look up people within their own organization. And so from industry, what I always encourage is help the government. If you're able to provide them some kind of tool that they can take to their contracting officer, especially if you're talking to someone in programs and say, hey, I have this company, we could do a directed subcontract to them. They already are on Polaris or on Oasis. We could do a task order there. I know we work with the office. We've done it before. Here's who we can contract out with. It changes the game in the way that conversation is going. Because if you know any contractors, contracting officers, and agreement officers, just like on the industry side, there's like one for every like 1,000 government people that are out there that's handling every contract action that there is for that team.
Industry does outnumber the government. Like, industry, listen, intellectuals, if you're listening here tonight, it you're not special. You're not the only one who is wanting their attention. So, you know, be a little bit more patient when they're not quite
Yeah.
responding. as quickly
Yeah,
as you would
absolutely.
like
And
it.
that's why that tool is so helpful, or something like it, where you can basically help guide them through that thought. You're giving them that 5 minutes of clear thought that we all need, but you're putting it on a piece of paper so they can have that to, like, to look at and be like, oh, I didn't think of leveraging this contract vehicle or leveraging this statute in order for us to get this done because I didn't know the budget or something like that. From the government perspective, when you're looking at industry, yes, they're asking you a ton of questions. They're trying to figure out, how do they get in contact with you? What does something mean? When is that solicitation going to post? If you create a timeline and you communicate a timeline to industry, please note that they have already created the calendar invites. They have already created the reminders, the tasks. They have already created their proposal calendar, and they're thinking through, how do I get ahead of this? So before communicating an industry day, a solicitation drop, a potential award or a task order or a draft RFP, if you say you're going to drop it on August 14th, you better drop it on August 14th, or tell industry prior to August 14th it's going to be delayed. Say something, because we are all waiting for something to happen on a specific date.
Say something, do
Yes, because
something,
we're all
right?
scheduling around that, because we also know, especially during fiscal year
Yeah,
end, we are making sure we get at least 3 hours of sleep on a daily basis so that we're writing something coherent for all of the proposals we're putting together that you will be reading and
right?
trying to get through. So I think on the government side, make sure that you understand that industry is listening to every single thing you say, and they're taking note of it. They're exchanging those ideas, that information. And if you, again, like, if you give them a date, if you give them a timeline, if you say in 60 days or 90 days, you better be prepared at that 60, 90 days to give some kind of
Yeah.
notice.
And don't do it around a major holiday too, right? Like that's like I'm sorry. It's not new. I'm glad you dropped it before your July 4th holiday vacation, but no, I'm not so happy about it because now you've like, caused
Not help.
everyone else to
Yeah.
have to miss their holiday. So, and could you not, ruin the trifecta of holidays, which is Thanksgiving, Christmas,
Every
and New
year.
Year's.
Every year it
So
happens.
every year. No, whew. I could air some grievances on that, but I'm just gonna choose to kind of to myself.